My name is Same for the Team.
The game is yours to play now.
The light provides.
This is Eventide Radio.
Hello and welcome back to Eventide Radio. This is a fan-made Destiny podcast where we have roundtable discussions about a variety of different topics concerning the popular video game franchise. At its core, this show is about having in-depth discussions about the game from a variety of different perspectives. I'm your host Scotty, and with me are my co-hosts Rob and Mapador, and today we have a very special guest with us. It's Ellimist from the Guardians of Lore podcast. He was with us a while back for our Duality Deep Dive episode, and he was kind enough to entertain us and come back to talk about the latest dungeon, which is Warlord's Ruin. Warlord's Ruin is included with the Nightfall dungeon key, and it's set in an abandoned warlord's castle. So obviously, before we get into this, spoilers ahead if you haven't played it or haven't bought it or whatever, because we're going to be talking about everything. We're going to be talking about the whole dungeon, including, spoilers for the lore and everything, and we'll probably touch on that little ending quest as well in case you haven't gotten there. So, to start things off, let's just go ahead. Ellimist, what have you been up to this week in Destiny? This is kind of a tradition we have. So I go around and I ask everybody what they've been up to this particular week. So what you been up to?
Mostly Dawning, and I actually did run Shattered Throne and Warlord's Ruin this week. So
Nice. Get anything good?
And we'll get into it later, but I haven't been excited about the loot from Warlord's Ruin.
Yeah. So nothing good.
No.
And you certainly probably didn't get anything exciting from Shattered Throne either, so.
It's more about the experience with friends than anything.
Yeah, exactly. I respect that. Rob, what have you been up to?
Kind of the same thing. Well, I didn't play Shattered Throne, although I think I'm kind of intrigued too, because that one, I don't know, at some point I'd like to go through and try to solo flawless as many of the dungeons as I can. I've soloed that dungeon, but I got ganked on heavy ammo on the final boss. I don't want to get into it. It's a sore subject.
Hopefully not for too much longer.
Yeah. Just playing the Dawning and making cookies for people and playing a lot of Gambit, I'm embarrassed to admit, because it's double XP this week, and I always like to do at least 2 resets on each one of the core activities, because I like getting the ritual weapon and then the ornament for each thing. That's just something I like to do for each season. So I've been playing Gambit, playing with some different builds and trying some stuff out, but mainly screwing around with Dawning and keeping up with the weekly story mission, of course, too.
Cool. Typical stuff, except Gambit, because you're a crazy person.
Which we don't need to talk about.
And Matt, what have you been up to?
Baking. Lots of baking, yeah.
Nice.
It's the season, right?
And getting very annoyed when I don't get personal touch to drop, and even though I've sat there and melee killed 50 million things with ability in it.
They gotta fix that. It's clearly broken, because that is consistently.
I went through 4 lost sectors before I got 1.
Yeah.
I killed everything with charge melees.
Yeah.
Insurmountable Skullfort, just went and kicked everything, tried to make sure most of the enemies were separate, so I didn't get collaterals, and just over and 4 lost sectors.
Yeah.
I'm starting to believe it wasn't real. But yeah, mainly that, and I have not played a lot of Crucible lately, so I thought it was my job to go in and do some more Crucible.
Oh, good. Yeah, you're supposed to be our resident PvP guy, so.
Haven't lost my touch, so it's fine.
Good. I have not even touched Dawning. I don't know when it was fairly recently. I don't know if it was this week or last week, but I crafted an age-old bond with enhanced repulsor brace and enhanced what is it? The void explodey perk.
Oh, destabilizing rounds.
Destabilizing rounds.
Yeah.
Which is a super fun combination. So I was very happy about that. But that's about it. Nothing too exciting. So let's dive into Warlord's Ruin. So now that I got the spoiler warning out of the way, I can talk about whatever I want. So it's set in a warlord's castle. Her name is, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but Naeem, something like that. And there, there's like an Ahamkara presence there who is existing beyond the grave somehow, and you have to go in and investigate what's going on. And there's Scorn. There's the first Scorn dungeon ever, which is a fun experience. And it's the typical kind of 3 encounter setup, and it's pretty fun. So I personally really liked it. But Ellimist, why don't you start us off? Give us kind of your brief summarized review, if you will, and then give it a score out of 5.
Ooh.
So I'm gonna absolutely say that like I'm biased about this. I enjoy Ahamkara lore. I love like Dark Age Warlord lore.
Mm-hmm.
And this actually like brought all of that together and into the modern Destiny age.
Mm-hmm.
The actual dungeon itself is fun. Like it felt like a D&D dungeon. Like that's where they drew some inspiration from.
Sure, yeah.
All of that being said, the loot itself is lackluster for me. And I know that like a lot of it is to be used for different looks. Like you cannibalize the actual armor itself to match other armor sets.
Sure.
Like all that together, I would personally give this a 4 out of 5. It is my favorite dungeon currently, though.
Oh wow! I think my last kind of question is like, where does it compare to the others? So, favorite dungeon out of all of them, and you're docking the 1 point for loot, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. All right, that's respectable. Rob, what about you?
He said, I'm kind of right there with you. From a kind of story perspective and the pacing of it, because I've we've talked about this off and on in the channel with other dungeons, but I've basically had a problem with every dungeon, and it prevents me from like really enjoying them to the fullest extent, whether it be some like really long jumping puzzle sequence, or there's one particular boss fight that's just like drags on or is like miserable. This doesn't have any of that. Like I mean, literally the first encounter is within like the first minute or two of like, once you kind of know where to go, it's like it snaps you right in there, which is almost like, whoa, okay, I was expecting, because we've kind of paced ourselves where like we expect the dungeons to always have like super long, and this is 3 boss fights. Like there's not like a, because like Shattered Throne is a good example, right? The first encounter is just this kind of like puzzle maze going around and finding symbols and stuff.
Yeah, did not age well.
Right. It's still fun, and it has a place, but ultimately this is like all action all the time. Even the it's kind of like hectic when you're going to each encounter. Like there's these little mini fights where you have to like sometimes kind of clear out ads, and it's like great. And yeah, I think the only real complaint I have is the loot is really kind of disappointing. We got the cool rocket pistol, and that's it. And the exotic looks like a rubber band gun, which is kind of disappointing. But like, yeah, some of the armor, like aesthetically, it shades well, and I think it probably looks like it could match kind of well with maybe some of like the Beyond Light armor, because that has similar like cold climbing-esque type stuff. So I'm intrigued to kind of play around with some of the armor elements. Like the helmets look kind of neat, but yeah, I think the only dungeon that's really nailed armor and weapons matching the theme of the dungeon was Spire the Watcher. Where like it went all in on the Tex Mechanica look, and it nailed it. I mean, if I still am not a big fan of the whole cowboy hats in Destiny, but like it completely acknowledged that at least the armor and the weapons match really, really well.
Yeah.
In this, it just is kind of like everything looks generic and kind of disappointing, but the dungeon itself has so much replay value and is really, really good. And I think it's probably up there with my favorite one, because it doesn't have any bullshit to kind of like prevent it from being an enjoyable just like experience with friends and solo.
Absolutely. All right, so out of 5.
I can't give it a 5 out of 5 because the loot is a big part of it. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a looter shooter. So I'm right there, probably 4.5.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like it. Matt, what about you?
I think Rob sort of made most of the points I was going to make. Where it's free boss encounters. You go straight in rather than faffing around, wandering around looking for things. Which has been a problem with most of the dungeons so far. Shattered Throne, it was nice the first time you did it. I remember going in that completely blind, having no idea and figuring that out, and that was fun. But it aged badly, and nowadays it is a pain in the ass where you've got to walk around for 10 to 15 minutes doing something that's just completely boring. And I'm glad that they've got rid of that. But yeah, free boss fights is a lot more fun because then you have control over something more rather than waiting for something to go up or, it's in, part of it is how good you are rather than, like how old Oryx fight was where you could do something that was in a set amount of time and you couldn't do it any faster.
Yeah, right.
It's the best example. However, the loot is awful. Like if you like the winter clothing aesthetic, then fine, happy for you. But I really don't like it. Like in this case, in the armor, and the weapons are not interesting at all. The sidearm is cool. I haven't had it drop yet. I am interested in trying it at least because it is a new sort of archetype of sidearm. So that'd be cool. And I haven't got the exotic either. But I think the sword matches the aesthetic best because it looks a bit like a climbing axe. Though we have had a climbing axe as a sword, so I guess they couldn't do a repeat of that. But I'm going to be a bit harsher on it and give it a 3.
Ooh, docking 2 points.
But that's the loot. I have no reason to play it at all.
That's fair.
No, and I would be harsher on other dungeons as well. I think. I think Ghost of the Deep suffers from worse problems. It's more fun than a lot of the dungeons we've had recently. Like a lot of them, I just really can't be bothered to play because of how long they take. Like Duality can be a slog.
Yeah.
And Ghost of the Deep is an absolute like walking through water and sand. But like the first time you do them, they're fun,
right?
But even the first time I did Ghost of the Deep, I was a bit like, okay, this is
wrap this shit up.
Yeah, I didn't have that with Warlord's Ruin, and I like where it is, and I like the fact that it's on Earth again, and it's in a location we haven't really got loads of before. We did in Rise of Iron, and but people haven't really had that aesthetic in a while. Different sort of snow to Europa as well, which is nice.
Sure.
But how it looks and the gameplay of it is great, but the loot is awful, and it is a loot shooter. So
yeah, that's valid.
Yeah,
I mean,
3 out of 5.
All right. So for me, if you guys have been listening to the show long enough, you might know that I have had some very passionate opinions about previous dungeons, and so I've been very disappointed with some in the past. But this, I'm happy to say, just solves all those problems for me. One of my biggest issues with stuff like Grasp and Spire is they just kind of take this one mechanic and then they just copy paste it for every single encounter, and they don't really build upon it too much, or not enough to make it interesting, in my opinion. But with Warlord's Ruin, I think every encounter is really, really cool and different and interesting. And it uses different mechanics and stuff. It's not like we're picking up items and dunking them or throwing balls at shit or something like that, because that's so tired. So for example, in the second encounter with they brought back the weather mechanic from Deepstone Crypt. I thought that was awesome, and they implemented that in a very cool way. I think the final boss with the Ahamkar is fantastic. It's the scale of that fight, I think, is really cool. I was probably a pain in the ass to play with, Rob, but I appreciate you playing that with me, because that was a lot of fun, and I really do it's a 3-phase boss fight. One phase is split up into 3 separate little sections and everything, and it's just you're like ascending this spiral essentially of I don't even know what you call it. There's like floating like rocks and everything because of like magic and whatever. Super super cool. I think like the castle is awesome just as like a set piece, but yeah, like you guys are saying, I mean I hate to just be an echo chamber just for the sake of discussion, but I do agree the loot is not good. I like, just for example, like I don't use snipers, I don't use swords, I don't use bows, I don't use sidearms, I don't use any of these like weapon types. And I get that they're probably less used and they want to give them more of a spotlight, but I just don't use them. I will say though, I do like the armor. I know that's kind of a hot take, but I don't know. As a hunter, I really like the hunter armor. I think it's cool. Like the winter like ice climber thing.
I
I
want to
think it's
double
kind
check
of
with the
sick.
armor. I
I
want to
think
double
it
check
looks
the
kind of
hunter
cool.
stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. I like the
Um,
hood is like the fur, like the white fur and everything, and the climber
the
boots are so
hood's
cool.
okay, I think.
It's a little like samey. I know it doesn't fit. Like I'm sure people would have rather have had like cool like knight armor or something more dark age aesthetic for the Warlord's Ruin dungeon, but I personally really like it, so I don't mind. Um, so I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 as well. It might be my favorite. I don't know. I'll decide that at the end of the episode, but
The So I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, it's all subjective opinions
Yeah.
on
oh yeah.
aesthetics, right? Like, so you're entitled to like the climbing gear, and we're entitled to not like it, or what have you. I
Mhm.
think we were talking about this before you got on, Scotty, but I think the part of the problem is like, so it's called Warlord's Ruin, and then we just got the Witcher armor that's paid, and so it's a little like kind of salt in the wounds because that looks more like armor that should be for a dungeon called Warlord's Ruin.
Sure.
Obviously,
I
like
get, sorry,
what's
yeah.
that?
I was gonna say I get why it's climbing gear, like I get it.
Sure.
But I think it just could have been a bit different because we've had
Right.
similar aesthetic. What did we have? It feels recent, but maybe it's not. Where we've had similar sort of thing, not climbing gear, but
Yeah, I mean
new-
it just looks like samey. I get that. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
it looks
But
familiar.
I was going to say, I think a lost opportunity because there's a little Easter egg at the beginning where you can see there's like a wizard, a knight, and a rogue, like
Yeah.
skeletons, like sitting by a fire, like outside the dungeon, and like that's like a and Ellimist, to your point, you were talking about like kind of the D&D look and aesthetic, which I think is very very just transparent. Like it has that fantasy dungeon-esque look. Like this is the first dungeon that we've had that's like legitimately in a dungeon. And
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
would have been, I sometimes get a little, I disconnect whenever they do kind of silly aesthetics, like when your character is like slacks, like the hunter slacks still bother me to like no end. And the cowboy hat kind of takes me out of the game a little bit too. But I would have been okay if in this scenario the armor was a little more themed around, like the warlock got kind of like a wizard armor set, and like the Titan got like a knight, and then the hunter got kind of like a rogue set. I think that would have been way cooler and would have matched the kind of the theming, if you will, of the dungeon as well in a slight, but just generic climbing gear, whether we've gotten stuff similar to it or not, just was like, I don't know, like you see the Witcher armor and it's like, okay, they can do better. And I think that's the problem.
I like the spikes on the boot, but
that is cool.
But beyond that, yeah. All right, so I see what you're saying, because I hadn't actually looked at the Witcher armor until like right now, and now I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh shoot.
Yeah, that's, and like
It's pretty
there was
cool.
probably reject designs that they could have just used instead for this. Like, they probably go through a few different iterations of like armor designs. Like one of those could have just been the Warlord's Ruin. Like maybe it would have been too samey to the Witcher armor, and like obviously they want you to buy the Witcher armor because it's paid and it looks pretty good. But like,
wait, hold on. Did they put the Witcher armor wallpaper? They put that in the dungeon, didn't they? Or it looks like it.
The wallpaper?
So they made like a key art for it.
Yeah.
And it's got the dungeon in the background, I'm pretty sure. I understand, like, no company would have put that in the dungeon.
Right.
Like, it would have been in the cosmetic shop. No company would have
Yeah.
done that.
Yeah.
Like,
But
I wish they'd put something, but...
Yeah, I understand, because it's like, they don't often go full fantasy. And, could be a missed opportunity when we have a full fantasy like end game activity, and then not capitalize on that as far as cosmetics go.
I will say the dungeon armor does look more Destiny than the Witcher one. Like, obviously the Witcher one is inspired by the Witcher, but if you showed me that, I think more of Destiny than Destiny typical armor than the Witcher one.
I see that too. All right.
Yeah, I mean, any of the themed armor that they've done, like the Fortnite armor, looked wrong, and like they also, like, the Assassin's Creed armor or whatever, kind of looked wrong. Like when they I don't have a problem with crossover stuff, but it also, like, it always takes me a little bit out of it.
I still want my Overwatch crossover so I can have a Cade skin as Cassidy or McCree, if most people know. I'm still petitioning for that to this day.
What would the Overwatch skin look like in Destiny, though?
Yeah, jeez.
You just give, like, Titans a Reinhardt or Doomfist one.
No, I think Titans should get Winston.
Yeah. The Warlocks get Mercy. That's pretty.
Or like Moira.
Or Kiriko, and then the Hunters get Genji, because that's just
that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Shouldn't Hunters get it's High Noon guy?
Yeah, Cassidy's
Agreed.
Yeah.
But Genji would be cool, like, especially with the hood that he gets in, like, the second game and everything.
But I think, like, a lot of as you say, the Fortnite one is a bit goofy.
I like the 30th anniversary.
Every warlock wears a stupid fox helmet now.
I wear the chest piece from that set, but I don't wear the helmet. I think the helmet looks dumb.
Yeah, well, there's obviously a lot of anime fans that think that it's a cat, and I don't know how many people I've told that that's a fox, right? And then their whole world gets shattered. So
how do they not know it's a fox?
Because it looks like a cat. Because it's Fortnite. What do you want, man? It's hot garbage.
Oh, God.
Guys, Lego Fortnite came out though.
Oh my God! Oh yeah, that's gonna be the next one.
I want to try that, but you have to have Fortnite to play it, and it's
free. Just download it. I
can't be bothered. I just can't be bothered.
Yeah, I don't want to give Epic my data.
Everyone's already got your data. Come on.
I know.
Don't worry, guys. Destiny expansions are free on Epic Games.
Yippee! All right. Anyways, side tangent.
Yeah.
Okay. We were talking about armor and how the loot is bad. Did anyone actually get anything good so far?
No.
Yeah, I've actually gotten some. Like, I got one of the snipers. It's a strand, so it has that new perk slice. I got like a reconstruction slice.
Slice is kind of cool. I was going to bring that up actually.
I've gotten one of the bows with like explosive and hatchling. Like, that's kind of neat. And I've gotten a couple of the rocket pistols, and I got the sword. They're all kind of meh. I mean, it's like we're in that phase where we're finally getting like strand and stasis stuff to fill like those slots, so that's kind of nice. The rocket pistol's kind of fun, but it's not some like amazing game changer. It's like, it's cool. It breaks barrier champions, and you can use it like in end game content for stuff like that. But it's not the new thing. Like, hopefully we get to see it in more than just this dungeon. Kind of like the grenade launcher that came with Spire the Watcher, that one that fires like 2 grenades. Like, I'd like to see that used in other content, but so far it's only been in that dungeon, so that kind of sucks. But it's okay. I haven't gotten the rubber band gun yet.
No, neither.
I want to try it in PvP, but I'm more interested in when when there's more of those sidearm archetypes when we get one in the kinetic slot.
Yeah.
So I'll compare
Yeah,
it with Fighting Lion.
Yeah.
Oh God.
But,
like the ultimate scumbag loadout.
Yeah, I mean, but it's cool. I haven't had one drop, and it's a cool idea. I hope it gets expanded upon.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be more of that archetype. I got a bow with slice hatchling, which is kind of cool.
What does slice do? I haven't had it on.
It's
It's like
severs targets.
After you use your class ability, it severs targets like a fixed number of them for like a fixed duration. You get like a countdown timer. So
yeah, I mean, it seems kind of neat. It's cool that they're both like strand themed, and Sundering is the origin trait. Speaking of,
yeah,
which I don't really understand the origin trait.
right, because there's no vehicles or constructs in the dungeon.
Does the boss count as a vehicle?
Look, I mean, if we want to talk lore, technically, right?
Oh.
It's like the avatar of the Ahamkara.
Yeah, so it's a vehicle.
It's a vehicle for the Ahamkara, right? So
but it's cool we finally got a boss that wasn't just a flat out. I know it is similar to the
meatball.
Chimera meat. Yeah, but it looks different enough.
It looks a little different. They did change up the meat. They made it more. I was telling Rob when we were playing this together, when you like first see the Chimera, like on that bridge, and I was like, wow, they made it look anus-y time. They like doubled down on the anus element.
See, I thought it looked like a fish.
Oh, you have a less dirty mind than I do.
Like a fish anus, or just like a fish?
No, it reminded me a bit of a Sharpedo, the Pokemon.
Oh yeah.
Floating there.
Oh my God, you're right.
But it was cool that they changed it enough, whereas all the other bosses have basically just been, reskin.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's cool.
It's cool that they did that.
It's better. Yeah, it's better than a lot of the other ones. I mean, I think though. I mean, they did Keitel for Duality, which I thought was really cool as far as like.
And then we had
bosses go.
The Fiery Knight in Pit of Heresy.
Yes.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet.
Doin Kara is slightly different to the typical witch.
Nah, I would just call her a witch, to be honest.
She's
not different enough.
A shadowy taken captain for prophecy.
Yeah, that doesn't. That was lame. I mean, it makes sense because it was supposed to be Aramis or whatever, but I don't. Whatever.
Skolas.
Stupid. Or was it supposed to be? See, this is why you're here, because more. I thought it was Aramis.
Because it was the 9 who created them, and the 9 had Skolas in their custody for a while.
Oh right, okay.
So they just like crafted a taken version of Skolas because that's what they knew.
Oh,
interesting.
Is it actually like Skolas's model?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I haven't actually looked at it specifically.
Let me double check.
That's interesting. I always was under the impression that it was like supposed to be like, because the dungeon was called Prophecy, and the next expansion was Beyond Light.
It's supposed to represent Aramis.
That's what I thought. That's interesting. That's cool. I didn't know that.
Huh.
But I mean, obviously, like they're not going to shove in Aramis's model there before the.
No. Yeah, makes sense. All right, so good segue into talking about the story. So, all right, so I found like a Reddit comment.
It's just generic taken captain.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not
lame. They should have stole the Skolas model.
It looks a bit like it's a mixture between the old D1 Fallen boss model that they used.
Yeah.
Like the what's the strike on Venus?
Oh, Winter's Run.
That's it. It's a mixture of that and then the sort of Skolas headpiece. But it's not Skolas. But
it has, right, yes. Skolas has those weird like horn things on his,
and he has like he has bigger tanks than some of the other. He has like bigger ether tanks.
All right, so to summarize the story of Warlord's Ruin, I'm going to kind of give a summary, and then Ellimist, if I say something wrong, correct me after I'm done here. So Naeem was, again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but she was a warlord who was in charge of, this was her castle, I believe, and she was killed by House of Kings when they came to take over her castle because she was friends with the Ahamkara Heffend, and her wish was to enact vengeance on the House of Kings, and so Heffend beyond the grave, it like his fulfills said wish, correct?
Yes.
In a nutshell, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, but with more detail, please enlighten me.
So it honestly, like, you got it on the head. Essentially, okay, cool. the House of Kings invaded the castle, and the Ahamkara wanted vengeance against them because I don't even actually know the motivations behind it. All I know is that the Ahamkara wanted vengeance.
I think it was because Naeem died, and that was her wish.
And they were like kindred spirits.
Yeah, they were buddies. And he's like, I'll do that for you because that was your wish and we're friends. The House of Kings killed my best buddy.
Right. So essentially, the Ahamkara reached out to the Taken because at this point, like, and this is modern time, the Ahamkara was able to reach out to the Taken because they are currently leaderless. The witnesses in the Pale Heart, Zivu Arath has retreated because she no longer is connected to her throne world.
Mm-hmm.
So like, there's nobody leading the Taken, and all they want is just purpose. They want something to give them direction. The Ahamkara took that and was able to manipulate it enough that, oh yeah, I'll give you purpose. And the Ahamkara was able to essentially pull darkness energy from them and create the Taken chimera that we see, which is essentially the Ahamkara's spirit. And then the Ahamkara was able to enact its revenge against the House of Kings by turning them into scorn. Gotcha. And using them as an army.
Gotcha. So they're brand new and they're not connected to fight rule or anything like that. Gotcha.
Right. And actually, that is why the first boss is there.
Yeah.
The first boss is one of Fikrul's knights.
Okay. Gotcha. That was speaking of, that encounter is pretty sweet. It's very simple, but I really like the spike cage mechanic. I think it's pretty cool. It's kind of stressful and it's new, and that's something we hadn't seen before, and it's a cool way to open the dungeon. It's just very fast and hectic and pretty short, but it's a cool encounter. And it's a good way to introduce the scorn and everything like that. It was pretty neat.
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah. And then speaking of lore, so throughout the dungeon, you get kind of the story of the dungeon, not only through dialogue from Petra and Aldrin, just like outside of these secret areas, but there are these secret rooms which have like Ahamkara bones in them, and you get some dialogue from Petra and Aldrin, and I don't know who else was part of it, maybe Osiris or something, but you get dialogue from them kind of unpacking the story, which was really cool. And I played it with you, Rob, and you had already, I don't know, level 3 essence or
Yes.
whatever you had to have to like unlock all these doors, which was actually like a very cool experience playing it through the whole time and finding all the doors and getting all the story. And I kind of wish that wasn't like gated behind multiple replays, because personally I really enjoyed that as my first go through, getting to see all the whole story through all of the little doors and everything.
Yeah,
I preferred that.
because I mean, like, so the way you're supposed to do it, right, is you complete it the first time. So you, like, before you even do the dungeon, you pick up a quest from Ikora, and when you go through it, you collect like a bone fragment after you beat Heffend, or the Spirit of Heffend, the Chimera version of him, and that kind of kicks you off, and then you have to basically go, and there's 3 tiers of doors that you have to find and open throughout, and they are kind of in line with the you have to kind of, when you kill a boss, they drop like a glass fragment or something like that, and you have to collect a certain number of those, as well as there are screebs that are around that kind of appear in specific places, and when you shoot them and damage them, they drop these tinctures that you pick up, and ultimately, so that's part of the quest, is you have to keep collecting those and finding like the tier 1 doors, and then once you do that, allows you to unlock the tier 2 doors, and then you can unlock the tier 3 doors. The only problem is they're kind of scattered in like a specific order, so like you have to basically go through the entire dungeon before you can start unlocking the tier 1 doors, and then you have to go through it again before you can start unlocking like the tier 2 doors. And so that first night that the dungeon came out, we went in blind and enjoyed it so much we ended up beating the dungeon like 3 or 4 more times, because we were kind of like, okay, well, let's find the tier 2 doors, and then we found all the tier 3 doors and like unlocked everything, and then it just kind of came down to like farming the bosses over and over again so you get those specific like currencies that they drop. But ultimately, yeah, so it's, but once you have the tier 3 doors open, if you take someone new through it, you can just unlock them as they appear kind of in the dungeon. So that's what I was able to do with Scotty, was just, okay, I know where this door was. I don't think we found all of them. There's still 1 or 2 that I'd kind of forgotten where they were located, but ultimately, yeah, you got kind of the meat of the lore going through it that first time. And I agree with you. It'd be kind of nice to like be able to do that as you're going through, but ultimately they want to have that kind of replay value of,
I get that.
but I mean, all the other dungeons, I'm trying to think, like you can find the dead ghosts or whatever in Ghosts of the Deep, like as you're going through the first time. So like if you're just being super meticulous and taking your time, you can basically get the entire kind of lore backstory, but this requires multiple playthroughs unless you have someone who's already unlocked all the doors for you. So I agree with you on that sense.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, this isn't speaking from experience because I already just got the whole story right off the bat, but I feel like in theory, if I went back and like replayed it and, had to, get it piecemeal through multiple playthroughs, I feel like it would just ruin kind of like the pacing and the investment I had in the story, I guess.
Sure.
I liked that it was just like a full through narrative, and it felt like one of the most cohesive and interesting stories out of all the dungeons, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because now they're putting more story. Like there is obviously story in the past dungeons, but now we have people talking to you while you're doing them, and
right,
and things like that. Whereas in some
like
of the
Shattered
others,
Throne or something,
yeah,
like, they don't talk to you.
I think you'd occasionally have Riven speak. Could be wrong, and then you'd have that statue, the awoken statue that was.
Oh yeah,
but
sure.
You wouldn't have people saying stuff throughout it.
Yeah,
I think that's definitely I think is a step in the right direction now.
I think so too, for sure. And I don't know, I feel like out of the recent stories, I do think Warlord's Ruin has the most interesting. Like you said, Ellimist, like the Hamkara lore, I think is awesome, and to get more of that is pretty neat. And we haven't done like Dark Age Warlord stuff in a long time, so to go back to that is I think a good idea.
And season.
Yeah, I know. When's the Shack season? And no Siva, guys. No Siva.
Yeah, that was
Why wasn't the final boss Siva? What?
that was definitely like hard copium for me when they announced the title of it was Warlord's Ruin. I was like, all right, are we finally gonna get some kind of like I thought maybe it was gonna be something like the Scorn are looking for Siva, and like I thought it was maybe gonna be kind of a Saladin fueled narrative where he's like guiding you as you're trying to like uncover stuff. Like that was my hope. I know that's like super naive hope, and ultimately doesn't really make sense because it's Warlord's Ruin, not Iron Lord's Ruin. So like,
I'm glad it's not Siva, to be honest with you. It's like I don't know, I've heard people talk about Siva so many times at this point.
I think
that it's just like
Bungie could have got away with not having Siva, but one, they made ornaments with Siva on, and then two, we had the 0 hour was about Siva,
right,
and that refueled people. There's Siva in D2, and obviously the pre-release screenshot in D2 of the Exodus, Black Strike was going to be about Siva,
right,
on Nessus,
right,
but.
Yeah, so it's as long as they keep putting ornaments in the game that have Siva, people are going to keep asking for it.
Yes,
that's on them for keeping that copium source alive. Like 100%, that's on them.
It's like dangling that carrot in front of us.
It is, but like from a lore standpoint, Siva's never going to come back.
Yeah, like that story's over. Right.
Well, even more than that, like it was the Warmind that created the procedure for Siva, and
Rasputin's dead.
We destroyed the replication chamber, so no new Siva is being created, and Rasputin is dead. So like, it's pretty much just gone.
You can have someone be like, "Well, the Vex can simulate Siva."
Yeah, exactly.
Now, like
bullshit excuse.
Now, like, there's still going to be Siva mentions in like the background of the background, because like we got mentions of that in Nightfall,
right?
How the Quicksilver is essentially Siva 2.0.
I reckon it will come back at some point in the far future, like just in some, because if enough people want it, then they're not gonna not do it. That's like silly not to.
You think so?
You know.
What if his final shape? What if his plan is to make everything Siva?
That's the actual.
I say we let him win.
Yeah.
The Destiny Reddit would be ecstatic.
Well, I think I know they haven't flat out said that they're going to bring back Wrath of the Machine.
Because they'd have to make Siva. They'd have to make the fallen models in detail.
Right.
The problem.
But it's also like, I don't know, like it is genuinely or generally regarded as like the best raid from D1, and they still haven't brought it back. And I think they're hesitant to, because of what you said, Mapador. Like they'd have to make these new character models and
then once they've done that, it opens Pandora's box of Siva's in the game. We all have Siva, and then but they can't not put the Siva in the. Can you imagine if they release Wrath of the Machine, but he's not Siva? All the Siva's gone from it.
Right. Well, it's not Wrath of the Machine at that point. Then
exactly. Yeah.
So I think they're stalling out as long as they can, having to put it in there. But at some point, they're going to have to put Wrath of the Machine.
When the numbers go to shit and the revenue's gone to shit,
exactly.
There's an emergency break glass for Siva.
Right. And I feel like that is if they. This is the spinfoil hat theory. If they get so low that they are considering having to close the doors again, I could see them coming out with a tweet saying like, "Hey, Wrath of the Machine is right around the corner," and that would generate so much hype and so much buzz and so much like freak outedness that it would rejuvenate the game 100%.
Like, I mean, they already did that with Cade, just like the nostalgia bait kind of thing.
Yeah,
where they have in case of emergency, like you said, man, with like. But they have a bunch of glass cases, and There's a little.
One's
cave
Galahorn, one's Cade.
There's a little a little hammer made out of Siva for breaking that glass.
One was Oryx.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What's another one?
Whenever they run out of ideas.
Well, Vault of Glass, I think, was the first one, right? Bringing that back was an experiment to see, like, are people
what's
even
his name? Joe Staten Destiny Cut is his. Was that his name? The guy who did the story of the first story. Yeah. That's that. That's somewhere as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Really?
yeah. There's a bunch of emergency cases somewhere that and I think Wrath of the Machine is the very, very last one, the like Omega one, where it's like, if we don't break this glass, we're turning servers off.
Totally. That's the last resort.
Right. And they wouldn't even have to come out within like a year, right? All they have to do is just make some ominous tweet that says like consume, replicate, destroy, or whatever the little like
Exactly.
right. That's all they would need to tweet, and you would have so many YouTube videos speculating. And here's what we know about Wrath of the Machine coming back in D2. It's like this is all we know, but you're gonna make a 10-minute video about it. Like
I'll go through the whole process of being like a social media manager at Bungie just to tweet that to cause chaos.
Yeah, that's all. And right,
then get sacked.
Right, and that's all they would need to do. And that would immediately rejuvenate whatever like negative low point the game is in, right? Like who there was some content creator that made some, I don't know if they were talking about Destiny, but they're like every game company is like 1 30-second trailer away from like completely getting back like pre-orders and things like that. And you brought up Cade, right? With like Final Shape Lightfall was not well received. And then at that 6-month mark, they had to have some kind of trailer come out. And sure enough, they showed Cade and everyone just lost their minds. So, yeah.
They fired Michael Salvatore so they could afford Nathan Fillion to come back.
Jesus.
Oh, God.
Oof.
That got a little dark.
I know. It's sad.
Scotty. That was
that's probably what happened.
What makes it even worse is the fact that all of his work for the Final Shape is already done.
Right.
Yeah. That's nuts. Sorry.
No, that's a good
I had to
thing.
go to that place.
Yeah, you just had to ruin it like a warlord. So
sorry. Sorry, guys.
No.
Apologize. All right, so let's talk mechanics of encounters a little bit, because we've just kind of glossed over it a little bit. But what is, someone throw out their favorite encounter out of the 3?
I think the biting cold is just hectic enough that it adds an element of like you have to pay attention, especially in that second encounter. And I think it makes for interesting damage phases because you have to stand by the fire, so you can't do like a sword. I mean, I've watched videos of people soloing it with like crazy Strand Titan builds where they are basically doing melee stuff, but for the most part, the typical team, or even if you're doing it solo, you're staying by the fire to stay protected, and part of that is due to the biting cold mechanic. And I like that it adds that element of like you have to be paying attention to it, and it's just one slight thing that you need to be juggling during that encounter while you're trying to take down the Scorn guys. So that's my favorite.
Yeah,
that's fair. I like the boss fight personally. I think the boss fight's really quite impressive. The only thing with the boss fight,
you mean the final boss, like
yes, the final Heffen, yeah. The biggest problem with that one, I think, in terms of like scale, it's just so cool, but the whole meleeing the stupid guys, it's not my favorite.
No,
that gets annoying, and
I can't tell you how many times I've died because I made something and then it meleeed me back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched a couple like Twitter like clips of people like they're trying to do a solo flawless and they just get stuck in this loop where they melee them and then the guy like melees them back immediately, and there needs to be like a cooldown for like transferring it or something, like because it's definitely, and it's one of those things when you have 3 people playing and there's 3 of those Scorn and trying to figure out which one hasn't been meleeed yet, and it's like hectic. Yep. Yeah, it definitely, that almost feels like it's easier to do if you're doing it solo because there's just you and one dude. And Like,
yeah, I feel like it would be better if there was just one guy, regardless of how many
right,
people were in the fire team.
right,
You know,
yeah,
it's manageable. It's still something you have to worry about, but it's like much more manageable and less infuriating when
right,
something inevitably goes wrong and you at the last frame possible you get
right,
doinked and then you're gone.
yeah,
So yeah, that mechanic is not my favorite, but the rest of it was really really cool, I think.
yeah. I like you can keep shooting the eyes to like extend damage.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
cool concept, and just like the fact that you like stand around like different platforms in a circle around the boss kind of reminded me of Argos. Took me back to Eater of Worlds a little bit.
Yeah.
Those damage phases. But yeah, I thought that one was cool. That's my personal favorite. Ellimist, what
My
was yours?
Oh.
Sorry, Map. What was your favorite?
the prison cell. The
you like
prison.
the prison?
Oh my god. So
Tommy Evil.
my fire team went in blind, and it took us 20 minutes to figure out that prison cell.
20 minutes is not bad. Rob showed me how to do it because we weren't gonna, watch me try and figure this out alone. There's no way in hell I would have figured that out.
Yeah.
That's nuts, dude.
So we went in blind the first day that I did it. Kind of. It had been spoiled for like two of us, where I accidentally like clicked on something in red, and someone's like, "Oh yeah, you just look at the tally marks, and that tells you clockwise versus counterclockwise." And I was like, "Oh okay," but that still didn't make any sense to us because we like finding all six of the little rotary dials was like the challenge, and us. But I love that, like, if you go in there with a fire team of 3, that you have to kind of like communicate to each other of like, I can see my 2 and those people can see their 2. Like, it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I can't like critique it because I didn't do it blind, but it seems like it would be absurdly difficult if I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like you showed me like the tally marks on the ground.
Right.
What? I would have never connected those dots. I don't even look up half the time when I'm playing Destiny. Like Ryan and I will be playing a dungeon. I think we did Spire and like Duality together, like blind day 1, and half the time we got stuck is because we didn't look at the ceiling, a hole in the ceiling that we're supposed to do.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of holes in ceilings in this dungeon too.
Yeah,
So
there are.
Yeah.
I've made it a point ever since to always look up. Every time I get stuck somewhere, I'm like, oh, it must be in the ceiling because I never look up.
Yeah, that is one. It's kind of more of like a meta critique of kind of like certain design elements in like the game, where like, okay, so perfect example for this dungeon is when we first went in, we thought we had to shoot the like the little things that the big scorn guys drop on the ground, because every other instance where they do that in the game, you just shoot like the void or the arc or the solar ones to break them. But in this, you and when you shoot it, it gives you a hit marker. And so for like the first time we did it, we thought we had to like shoot it to like break and whittle them down or something like that, or like to neutralize them. We had no idea that standing in it is how to like do it. Now there is like a little circle around there, but every other instance where you've ever seen this in the game, you shoot it to destroy it. Or likewise in like King's Fall, when you have to stand in the blight to detonate the corruption, every other time up to that point you've ever seen blight, you just shoot it. So there's like kind of something not intuitive, or I think the probably my biggest example and most egregious one is in Duality, where in every other instance you shoot the bells to like transport to like the different dimension, but only in the Keitel fight do you shoot the bells to stop her and stun her. And it's like, that should have been a different symbol, or it should have been a different thing, because up to that point the bells do a completely different mechanic. And like it bothers me when they do kind of stuff like that, where they're not reusing assets, because that's not really what the issue is. It's just like they're and I know it's kind of supposed to be a puzzle and like a mechanic to like figure out, and that's like part of the fun of it. It just sometimes they reuse things in a different way where we've been trained to do things a specific way, and I always kind of ponder like, how the hell were we supposed to figure that out? Or like,
it's
why
like
is it
the
when
dungeon teaches you a mechanic, and the whole way through you're being like in Rage, you're being taught, oh, this is the mechanic,
right?
And then they add stuff to it. Oh, we're going to make it harder by doing this. Oh, we'll change it up a bit by doing this. Whereas, like as you say, in Duality and in this, it's like, oh, it's a complete different thing,
right?
And it doesn't. Yeah, like I get. Yeah, I get it.
And it ultimately didn't matter because we figured it out like almost immediately. Like on the second attempt, we're like, oh, we're standing in it and it's going away. But it's just that kind of initial like, why give us hit markers and use the design of something that we've always had to shoot to destroy or like interact with, and now we have to like stand in a pool around it. Like it just they do things like that once in a great while. That's just like slightly counterintuitive and frustrating. But
yeah, I see what you mean. I don't think there's too much of it in Warlord's Ruin though.
No, and once you figure that out, everything else is good. I think the only we kept dying at the second boss because we did not realize that the lamps in the back were how you get rid of biting cold. And we felt really silly once we figured it out because we're like, oh, there's these lamps right here. We can stand next to them. Like I was because the first time I saw it, I'm like, there's no way that's like warm enough that would, if I'm dying due to like frost from like a deep freeze, this little tiny lamp's not going to thaw me out. But lo and behold, it did. So we felt kind of silly there, but that was a fun mechanic to figure out because it's like you're supposed to kind of like wander around and explore and look at like what can you interact with, and like it has an obvious kind of like color difference to know. So that was on us for not like figuring that out, and I was, it was kind of one of those like head slap moments where it's like, we're idiots. Like of course that's what you do. But when you're getting hit markers on something that you normally shoot and nothing happens, like that's a bad design. But
yeah. I another weird mechanic, speaking of like the second encounter, not that it's bad, it's just it was a little strange, is, you know, whatever they're called, the little taken ball things, like cleanse, I guess, in order to, you know, continue the encounter in that second one.
The eyes that you shoot?
Yeah, the eyes. Well, no, not the eyes. When you have to kill the big Scorn guys, and they drop one like halfway through their health.
Oh,
and then they drop the other one at the very end. And if you insta kill them with like a rocket or blade barrage or golden gun or whatever, they'll only drop one, which is kind of strange.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily bad. It just kind of was a little odd. It took me a minute to figure that out.
Yeah, because there's times where I've sat there. So for if you haven't done the dungeon, spoilers and all that stuff, there's these Scorn that after a while will drop these. What are their little blight things called?
I have no idea.
But they're kind of like when you normally fight the Scorn, they drop the little like floating lanterns that either like have the arc or void or solar effect, where like the arc it like slows you down.
The totems.
The totems, thank you. Yeah, so there's like a taken totem that they drop, and you have to stand in it, and that like purifies it, and usually that's how you get to like either damage or to the next part of a mechanic. And in the second encounter, you have to stand in there, and however many you neutralize causes these little like burning pyres to get created that you can then put in these pillars to start on fire, and that's how you do damage. You generate 4 of them, and then you stand in that pillar in order to actually damage the boss. You get like a countdown, and then you have to run to one of the other ones. So it's kind of like the caretaker in Vow of the Disciple, sort of. So it's a cool mechanic, but however many you get each cycle is dependent on how many of these stupid things you neutralize, and it's seemingly you can get a single Scorn to drop 2 at a time, because they always drop one when they die. But it seems like either you have to like get him to drop it, you can like kind of chip away, but it seems like if you stun lock him, he won't drop it. So you can do like a little bit of damage to pepper him, but you want him to drop it, and then you want to kill him immediately, and then you can stand and basically, because it takes about 7 seconds to purify, people keep calling it a Venn diagram because there's like a little circle on the ground where you have to stand, and so if they overlap, it looks like a Venn diagram. And so you can stand in that little section and purify both at the same time, which gives you like, it speeds up the encounter and how quickly you can get to damage, and so it makes sense. But trying to get him to drop that initial one seems really inconsistent. Like, if you do too much damage, you can either like immediately melt him and then he'll only drop the one, but you're kind of on this tight timer because eventually the biting cold mechanic from Beyond Light will come out, and after 10 seconds of stacks, you basically die, and so you have to like purify it. But yeah, there's no seemingly consistent way to get him to drop that first one, and it's really frustrating.
It's finicky.
Yeah.
And, anytime there's a mechanic like that relies on just like weird stuff like that, it's a little bit frustrating. It's like, it's not nearly as bad as this, but, the middle encounter of Grasp of Avarice with making that revolve around the physics.
Oh, yes. You love that encounter, Scotty.
Oh, yeah. Sure. That's a word for it. That is the worst dungeon encounter out of every dungeon ever. And it was just a stupid idea. On paper, it just sounds idiotic to have it based around like physics. Like, that's a horrible idea. But just like stuff like that, where it's not entirely within your control kind of thing. Yeah. It's never fun. When you're fighting against the game itself, it and not playing it doesn't work.
Yeah, the difficulty shouldn't be in getting the game to cooperate. It should be in your ability to like execute in a way. And I mean, there's a lot of instances like that, right? Because the more of these you purify, like in the first encounter, extends how long you get to do damage on the boss. And sometimes it's simply the case you can only diffuse one of them, and getting to the second one is like difficult. And so it's kind of like, well, that sucks. And then other times you get really, really lucky and he'll drop both right next to each other, and you can do the Venn diagram thing and dismantle both at the same time. And it's seemingly RNG, and it's like all the while you're like running around making sure you're not dying or getting yourself into a situation where you get killed. And you also have to balance this mechanic. And obviously it's a dungeon, and to be able to pull it off solo and flawlessly should be a feat that, not everyone is able to do, because it's not just a strike. There's some skill that needs to go into this. But to a certain point, it's frustrating when it seems like it's out of your control, and it's nothing you did wrong. It's just the game decided to give you two of them this time instead of one for seemingly random reasons.
Sure. Stuff like that just makes it difficult. The good thing is, though, I think with Warlord's Ruin is like it's not like egregious. Like, this isn't like the main part of that encounter or anything like that. And it doesn't like hinder how much I enjoy the dungeon as a whole or that encounter specifically. It's just a trend that I hope doesn't continue with certain things.
Right.
And the same thing kind of goes with like the punching the dude in the last encounter, because it's not entirely, I mean, you could argue it's a skill issue, but it's just like kind of annoying.
Right.
Because it's like, ultimately, it's almost like fighting with like the AI, and you're like up to the mercy of that kind of thing. Right. But I don't know. But anyways, so all that to say, I think it's time for the final verdict, which means where does it rank among all of the other dungeons? Because I love comparing things and ranking. It's fun. I don't know why. But Ellimist, we'll start with you. You said this is your favorite of all time. What's like your top three, at least, then? What's like second and third place?
So second is Prophecy.
Okay.
And part of that is because like I was in there for like 2 or 3 weeks straight trying to do the solo flawless.
Mm-hmm.
And finally got it, and I felt so accomplished, and I still do. And then third favorite is Shattered Throne.
Oh, wow.
Nice, simple. Like if I want to get somebody started on end game content, I usually take them through that.
That's fair. I mean, it's pretty easy.
Right. It's easy. Like it's a little bit of an ego boost for them, because like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. It's a good beginner dungeon.
Yeah. There's cool parts of it. Like the thrallway, I think is pretty sweet. Like
Oh my god, yeah.
pretty sweet elements.
I took a clanmate through last night for her very first time, and we were sitting at the thrallway just farming ammo. And she was like, "Do these ever stop?" And I'm sitting here like, "No, they never stop. They never stop."
Throwaway.
It's called that for a reason. That's funny.
My other clanmate was like, "No, we're just here. I'm just farming ammo until you guys say you're done." And I'm sitting there like, "I've been done for 5 minutes. Like, come on."
That's awesome. All right, that's cool, and I respect that. I'm not gonna say I agree because Prophecy's not my favorite, but I respect it. Rob, what about you?
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
If you put Grasp of Avarice anywhere, I'm
So this might be
never speaking to you again.
This might be number one. Like I don't really have like there's little nuances with some of the mechanics, but none of them feel like a tedious slog like so many of the other fights. Like I think Spire the Watcher is like really only I don't like running it because like I hate shooting the eyes in the second encounter. Like that drives me nuts. I know it's like one little part of it, but I hate doing that. And then
do you know what people are going to say to that?
Yeah, what?
Skill issue.
Yeah, well, I'm on console, so like I acknowledge that, but it's like
no, same is
the only reason I was able to get through that is I had a trace rifle with reconstruction, and I could burn through all 200 shots and like melt the eyes. That's the only way I was able to do that one solo. But like, so okay, so all of that to say, I don't really have any gripes with this. Like, yeah, the punching those guys gets a little tedious, but like I usually run Invis Hunter, so it makes that part a lot easier because you can literally smoke bomb them and in the same like action go invisible and melee them and they don't bother you. So like that's fine with me. So I would think this is number one, and then yeah, Scotty, I'm sorry to say, I think Grasp is number two for me.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, because I
dead serious
for the same kind of thing of Shattered Throne is I like taking people through that encounter or through that dungeon for the first time because the set pieces are like entertaining and because people like the Cosmodrome and like feel at home there. But I've taken a lot of people through that dungeon and people have a hell of a time with it. And have like the people like doing the Sparrow encounter where they're dismantling mines and
I'll give you that. The Sparrow encounter is pretty awesome.
And I do completely acknowledge and I do accept that the second encounter where you're pushing the physics bombs around are incredibly tedious, and I wish there was a better way to traverse that whole play space. But I really like that it's one giant open arena. And I would love if we got like a Crucible map that was a small version of that, where you had man cannons that you were using to launch back and forth between platforms, and like I don't know, like that just seems like screaming for a PvP map. And I like the final boss encounter. And then I think third is Shattered Throne also, just because I think it's like kind of a neat setting, and to your point, Ellimist too, like it's very approachable. Thematically, it's really, really cool. Like it's this whole castle that's just completely taken, and some of the and each of those three encounters feels completely different. Like that was something that they kind of seemed to steer away from after Pit of Heresy, where like each encounter you're doing something completely different, and it's intuitive and easy to understand. And Duel and Karu is kind of a fun final boss once you like have it kind of mastered. So yeah, I think that's my three. Sorry, Scotty.
That's insane. No, I respect it. I get it. I've never taken people.
Well, and I think the armor and weapon drops are like some of the best from Grasp of Avarice. If we're using
Destiny 1.
No,
like, oh, I'm kidding.
No, but because you also get the thorn armor, which is like incredible.
Oh, I forgot that. What was it called?
Yeah.
Twisting Echo or something
Yeah.
like that.
Something like that.
Hunter. Those are cool, yeah. And that was when they first started doing what was the special armor called? The extra
Artifice.
Artifice armor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, I'll save that conversation for another time because I could.
Are you firing me from the podcast now?
I mean, drafting the letter as we speak, but. Map, what is your ranking? No, go ahead.
I mean, it just boils down to the fact that he likes pushing balls around.
Yeah, exactly.
True. No, and you like Gambit because that's all it is. That's all it is, Rob. It's just
Gambit. It really is.
Just go play Gambit. Gambit's more fun, anyways.
Yeah, but this has cool armor. Gambit doesn't, so
that's true.
Oh my god! So we've got Gambit the dungeon and Gambit the raid.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Wait. Also, you could also just go play Prophecy because that's the same thing too.
No.
Same dungeon.
No, because there's a light and dark mechanic as well, so it's slightly like Gambit.
It's slightly better.
Slightly different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slightly better because Grasp has nothing else besides you pick up things and you dunk them. That's it.
You don't dunk them. You stand next to it, and they
That's
dunk
even worse.
for you.
You don't even have to press a button. You just stand next to it.
Right.
This is like
It's the most heated debate I've ever heard of.
You can emote while you're depositing them, so it's like a double win.
A double. It's a dungeon. It's a dungeon. It's supposed to be at least halfway difficult.
There's Gambit in bloody thingy. Why have I forgotten the name of it? In the Rolk fight. That's Gambit. That has some Gambit in. Everything has fucking Gambit.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's everything's just like the final boss in Garden of Salvation is Gambit, and
it's
like
hell,
Gambit is the final shape, right? With Siva. So
oh,
it'll be Siva themed Gambit. It'll be Siva.
You joke people would play that.
They would play it. They buy it.
People would play it. They would.
True. Don't give them ideas.
No, it'd be fun.
All right, Map. What's your top three?
One is probably Prophecy.
That's you guys are crazy.
I just love the aesthetic of it. I know there are the sparrow bit in the middle is a bit but I like the boss fight and the music is very cool.
That's fair.
Two is probably Shattered Throne. Just the experience of doing it for the first time, like with who I was playing Destiny at the time. We went in like completely blind, underleveled, and two-manned it. And that was probably one of the most fun experiences I've had in the game anyway. And then because of just how vast it was at the time, and obviously for a new experience of a dungeon. And then probably third is Spire.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just named three of my least favorite dungeons.
Hey, the rest have all got long ass bit. Grass would probably be fourth or maybe fifth. Just because of the servitor encounter is literally, if you took that servitor encounter out, it would have been amazing.
Amazing is a stretch.
It literally it's such a like it just kills the mood, the vibe, and the pace of the whole thing. It's like you just did all this cool stuff, and then bam, here push servitors into a cannon.
Yeah, it kills the pacing of the dungeon 100%.
It does.
If they added a different encounter there, or they did like the boss had two phases, that would have been fine.
Yeah. And doesn't the servitor encounter come right after the Sparrow encounter too?
Yeah, that's why it kills the pacing.
It's like the Sparrow part is so fun and like it's awesome, and then it just comes to a screeching halt.
The only good thing about that bit is the music, which is the Skolos thing. It's not the full one, but it's a version of it.
Yeah, the Shadow.
And when I first, no, it is part of the. Is it the Skolos thing or
no? It's not the Skolos. It's from the Taken King soundtrack though. But it's
and when we first got there when we were doing it, I was like, oh, this is cool, and then it quickly just became what the can it end?
Yeah,
and then it'd be like probably this Warlord's Ruin probably be fourth or fifth. I can't decide, and then Ghost of the Deep is definitely last, and then Pit and Duality can fight it out because Pit is kind of bad, but the aesthetic is cool and the music is cool. But the
You guys are gonna
duality.
love my list.
Yeah, I already kind of know what half your list is, and it's I feel bad for you, Scotty.
If anyone in existence was Ghost of the Deep as number one as their favorite dungeon, then there's something. I think they should be locked away.
Well, it's unfortunate because it's probably thematically, it's probably my favorite. It's just not fun to play.
No.
He said thematically.
Yeah,
right,
no,
exactly.
no.
Like all it would take a lot for me. And Scotty, I know you and I will run it sometime. It's going to take a lot for me to like want to farm that dungeon. Like, let's say I wanted one of the weapons or something, but I got really, really lucky and I got the exotic on my first run. And I was like, well, I'm glad I don't ever have to do this again. But because it is like, I absolutely love the idea and the reveal, because we did go into it blind, and it was kind of this big reveal where it's like, well, I'll save it for Scotty, although you kind of know, but it's like, it's such a cool, like, aha moment for like the entire franchise.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the encounters are.
But the encounters are so terrible. All they need to do is remove the shield from them, so you don't have to use Arbalist, and cut their health in half. Like, that's all you'd have to, and shorten the underwater sequences.
Make it so, Joe. What they should do, make it so if you've done the dungeon a certain amount of times, you can run through the water.
Yes. There should just be like a portal that allows you to just go to the second encounter. Like, yeah.
Because it is so. Oh, the amount of times I've done that bloody dungeon on a Sunday night at like 10 p.m. for some unknown reason, and I've got to get up for work and be up at 6 in the morning, and someone's gone, oh, let's do that dungeon, I need to do this, and I'm going, oh,
Fine.
And then we get to the final boss, and it's stupid time, and I should be in bed. Oh.
All right, so Map, you're the first to bring up Spire the Watcher, though, as your top 3. Spire.
I just find it fun, the shooting the connecting wires and cables. That was just it was very refreshing. I know
You
we
like
do a
doing
lot
that
of
the
shooting.
entire time?
I didn't mind it. Yeah, I know it's like shooting the. It's different than standing on a plate or walking through water.
Yeah,
that was
more
enjoyable than that.
It's
with
fun.
with the shooting mechanic of connecting the wires, though, I love that, like, by the time that because I ran that one solo, by the time I had finished it, I felt so confident in my memorization of like which pylons I had to shoot in which order.
Yeah,
that like that one you are rewarded for like kind of practicing it. Yeah, exactly.
I can go to the first boss and just do each section of it just like that, because I remember how they are, and it doesn't take very long. Like the first time you do it, it's going to be a bit of a slog, but once you know what order they go in, it's just easy.
Right.
I think my biggest problem with Spire the Watcher is I'm so ass at that first platforming part where you gotta jump on all the things. I don't know what it is, but there's like a disconnect with me for completing that.
He's got vertigo.
I also I wish that. So is Spire the Watcher the only one that has like an opening encounter that's not really an encounter? Because I think that also kind of hurts that dungeon of like, right, you have to do that whole opening sequence to get it started, and then you don't even get like, there's not a reward for it. So it's like, it hurts that one, because like, as a stark contrast to this, where it's like you load in and you're at the first encounter
Grasp
in like
technically has
3
that.
minutes. What's that?
Grasp of Avarice has that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'll give you that. That has the whole opening. Yeah, you're right.
There's a reason why the Grasp of Avarice has that in like opening thing. That makes sense. And I do get
and Prophecy.
Yeah, Prophecy has the opening. But that one's pretty short. Like you're only doing a couple of those tunnels.
Right, and
like,
it's literally just to understand the mechanic.
Right. Yeah. And to be fair, I mean, they all do that, right? The Grasp does that to teach you how to play Gambit, and Spire does it to teach you how to play Connect the Dots. But like,
and the other ones, don't have that because they're not the same all the way through, the same way Grasp, Prophecy, and Spire are. Like Warlord's Rune doesn't have that like throughput kind of mechanic besides the circles, which they teach you in the first encounter anyways. But,
I mean, they've got the eyes. The Taken eyes all have different like different reasons for shooting them throughout each encounter, but you need to shoot them.
That's true.
Yeah.
They are in all the. But okay, so you guys ready for this?
Yeah. What's your list,
God,
Scott?
no. Let's do it.
Yeah, you guys are gonna hate me. I think number 1 is probably Warlord's Ruin. I think it's awesome. I think number 2 is Pit of Heresy.
Really?
Number 3 is Duality.
What? Right, I get Pit. Kind of see that. The boss is fun. The final boss is really fun. I agree with that.
It is fun. It's cool.
You had me until that last one.
Duality, man. Nah.
I
Do you
remember liking Duality. It was.
Did you crack the Liberty Bell?
The crack the Liberty.
Did you do that?
Yeah, it was all me.
Since you like hitting bells.
Oh yeah. I don't know. I guess it came after a lot of dungeons that I was like not thrilled with, and then Duality. Just my biggest problem was I just don't like, as far as dungeons go. That's what I look for, is like a mini raid, and I don't think doing the same thing every time is a raid to me. So Duality having a different mechanic every time and having it be like a very unique thing. I thought the whole like, between two dimensions bell thing was kind of cool, actually. I don't think there's a ton of like stupid annoying stuff, except maybe like the Calron's deceptions things are kind of annoying. I don't know. I like it. I guess
it's getting to the first boss fight is one of the longest things.
The introductory thing to
Yeah.
That's fair. I don't know. I'm just a sucker for the Leviathan aesthetic too.
Fair.
I've always liked the Callus stuff. I guess like the Leviathan raids were my first, and so I think I'm always going to have that nostalgic connection to them, I guess. I thought the story was really cool. It's like a, inside Callus and Keitel's kind of psychology. I thought that was cool. I don't know. I just liked it. It's different. It's something like, it's just something unique, as opposed to some of the other
health
checkup.
Now, like thematically and story wise, like I do like Duality up through Warlords.
Yeah,
but playing them is just such a slog for me.
Different experience. That's fair. I understand that. I can't say I've probably played Prophecy more than Duality, for sure. But I don't know. I thought it was cool. I like the weapons too. Like the weapons look cool as hell.
The weapons are good.
Weapons are cool.
Yeah. If it actually dropped for me.
The armor kind of blows, but the weapons are cool.
Yeah, well, the whole like each weapon foundry had to get like an armor theme, and then sticking them in as like dungeon armor.
Random
never made sense. Like, why is it Hake armor?
Duality? Yeah, that makes
Duality, and
at least the only one fit the color scheme.
Yeah, the only one that's made sense is Spire the Watcher, like being Tex Mechanica themed. Like
that was cool.
But yeah,
well, originally the what is it? Daito armor wasn't going to be in Prophecy. It was going to be the Eververse stuff. But they were like, "Oh, we'll, be nice and put it in there."
And for some reason, that was like moving forward, like the theme of doing the armor being. I don't know. It's like weird. Like for some reason, Shattered Throne, the armor that you get in that, like, yeah, it's the throne or the Taken or Dreaming City armor, but it's still like thematically and aesthetically matches the dungeon and the weapons. Like they all look like they make sense. And same with Pit of Heresy. Like it's all that kind of Dreambane stuff. So it kind of works. But then like Prophecy, they made this huge split, and then like they kind of veered back onto it when they did Spire the Watcher, and then they keep deviating. Like the armor and weapons don't match for Ghosts of the Deep. The weapons and armor don't match for Spire the Watcher. Like why do they? Well, I guess they kind of match for Warlord's Ruin, but like, I don't know.
I'd say they match for Warlord's Ruin.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But I agree. Like the weapons for Ghost, they make sense because of its Titan, but then the armor is Hive.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's kind of
weird.
I wish they do it like Prophecy did, where Prophecy had like 2 armor sets, right? Because like the Dido stuff was
right. And then they had the kind of like Trials of the Nine-ish armor.
Yes. I want to say that the
Imagine
Dido stuff was only the boss drop, right?
It was, yeah. Imagine if we didn't get that armor in the dungeon. It'd be shocking. We'd just get the reprisal of the Trials of the Nine stuff.
Yeah, right. It'd be kind of unfortunate. All right, so I think that's about it. But does anyone have anything?
No, we have to talk about the final like reveal. So.
Oh yeah. Because you did the little quest.
Yes. So there's like a quest throughout. Like I said, you pick it up from my core, and then when you finally get all of the bones, and you get all the glass and all the tinctures, there's a. Is it actually Toland that's there, or is it just they like reused like a Toland swirl? Like
I don't know, Toland because nothing else has ever been.
But like, why would he
look like that, right?
Be there? I guess because it's Taken related, like that.
I mean, if he didn't say, but he has no dialogue, right?
Right. Yeah, you don't talk to him. You just like interact with it, and then it opens up a portal.
That's
but weird. I don't know why. I don't know why it's like a Toland orb that's just floating there. Like that didn't make sense to me. And I haven't read too much of the lore behind this, but yeah. So kind of what we were talking about at the beginning is, So Naima, whatever. Naeem befriends this Amkara, and then it's dead, and the reveal is because while you're going through this, Crow is talking to Petra and kind of explaining that he remembers hearing this story about this warlord that had this castle, hearing it from Saladin, and he kind of just assumed it was like a campfire story that you tell. But now that you're going through the dungeon, he's like, holy shit, this is that story. And it was always kind of the story of there was one warlord that killed the Amkar, and then another one that befriended the dead version of it, and they were buddies, and the Naeem like wished for good deeds to be enacted around the people, and that he wanted people to like her, or she wanted people to like her, right? That was like the wish that she had made from Heffend. And then the House Kings came in, and of course Crow kind of blames himself because the House Kings are related to Scorn and all that fun stuff. But then you open up this portal, and you finally find like the skull of Heffend, and he talks to you, and basically the punchline and reveal is that Lord Shax is the one that actually killed Heffend. And like Crow's like, yeah, Saladin always left that part of the story out, so that's kind of a cool. I don't know if we'll ever go back and reference this or like confront Shax about this, but it is certainly kind of an awesome little like reveal that he was the warlord that was responsible for the death of Heffend at this castle.
That is pretty cool.
I've just had a thought about the story with Shax, because I know we were saying about Shax having story stuff, but maybe it will be continued when I imagine they're going to do something eventually in the future with the Ahamkara eggs.
Right.
And he's very tied to killing a fair amount of them. So.
Oh, you think he's gonna destroy all the eggs that we're collecting for revenge?
No, maybe there'll be like what they called an episode down the line where it's Ahamkara and Shax related.
That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
I would be interested because there's not a lot of Shax content.
So, but yeah, if you haven't done or if you haven't done Warlord's Ruin, you should do the dungeon. It's really cool. Do the quest, because you get an exotic at the end, and the rubber band gun looks kind of cool. So
it's something. It's something.
Yeah.
All right. So, Ellimist, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll some time, because we like having you. And thanks for listening to all our shenanigans. Thank you guys for listening to all our shenanigans as well. Don't forget, you can find us on Twitter or X or whatever you call it these days. You can find us on YouTube, wherever else you listen to podcasts, stuff like that. Please send us a message. We would love to further the discussion, if you will. And you can find Guardians of well. They're also on Twitter /X, Guardians of Lore, I believe is the handle, right?
Guardians_lore, yeah.
Guardians_lore. And then I'll put that all in the description, and then Ellimist will link your own personal account as well. So please go check him out. He's awesome. Go check us out. We're super awesome too. Thank you guys for listening.
Check out our duality lore dive too, so you can understand why
Yes.
Scotty thinks it's a decent dungeon.
Yeah, if you want to go into the deep recesses of my mind to try to understand the inner machinations, what's going on inside this warped head that I seem to have, guys, please go listen to that. We had a lot of fun doing that. It's like a 2.5-hour episode, so block out some time or something. But thank you guys for listening. Go check us out on Twitch as well, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
You can put this voice recording away and go on with your life, because you and I both know you'd have me yapping in your ear for the rest of your days.
Want to further the discussion? Get in touch with us at any of our Twitter handles, all of which can be found at our podcast description.